The Road to El Dorado. Back during the very beginnings of DreamWorks Animation, before they became one of the biggest non-Disney animation studios with Shrek, they actually cared about making hand-drawn animated films. For the most part, they were jumping on the 1990s bandwagon where an animated movie has to also be a musical, with a few exceptions of course. Where it worked out well with The Prince of Egypt with a nice box office score and an Oscar for Best Song, this one did not. Critics and audiences were mixed at the time and it ended off as a flop. It wouldn't be until years later when it was rediscovered and gained a whole new fan base to the point of earning a cult status. In fact, you can argue that it's now DreamWorks' most popular hand-drawn film. But now that we're entering El Dorado, will it present itself as an animated film of gods, or is it a city made out of fool's gold? Let's find out. The story. As it does contain many elements to really spice this up, the story mainly focuses on the partnership between Tulio and Miguel. As they would start out as con artists, they would eventually find themselves in the City of Gold and end up being mistaken for gods. Now, at this point, one would expect that this would follow the old trope of the liar story, where the main characters have to lie their way to leave this newly visited land, and then later, it's revealed that they are phonies and then save the place by being true to themselves. And yet, it doesn't do that at all. What El Dorado serves instead is a big test to their friendship with many obstacles thrown in to see if there can be anything that could separate them. In a way, this could be interpreted as a character-driven story, since it is about the main characters more than about El Dorado itself. I'll explain more when I get into the characters, but this actually works beautifully, thanks to the great execution of Tulio and Miguel by delivering some great energy and a good dose of witty humor.
I'll bet we can make that. Crusaders says we can't. You're up! You lose.
Like I said before, even if the plot itself revolves around the two guys, the movie does deliver plenty of elements, the biggest of which being El Dorado itself. This is where the crew carefully crafted the place to be this living city from ancient Mesoamerican times. In fact, many of the scenes are meant to highlight some of its cultural aspects, like sports with the ball game, their festivities, and even their mythologies. Sure, the city is made of gold, but the people are not gold crazy, and that is why El Dorado is crafted here in a manner that feels more believable, yet has its own enchanting charm. Also, I just want to mention about the songs that are featured here, since they were done by Elton John and Tim Rice, aka the same guys who did the songs for The Lion King. Them coming back for another animated film is a pretty big deal. Technically, this is not a musical, since the only time the characters burst into song is with It's Tough to Be a God, and the rest is delivered by montages with Elton John singing. Although not necessarily as memorable as the ones from the Disney film, since the music is not as prominently featured here, the songs are still really well done, and there could be a chance that you might come out with at least one stuck in your head. With an entire city bestowed upon them, the story would rather stick with the friendship of two buddies. Well, good thing its heart is in the right place. The animation. I know it's been a long time since they've ever fully developed one, but back in their early days, DreamWorks made some pretty great hand-drawn animation, and some of their creative talents can be prominently displayed here. The biggest influence in terms of the production design is the Mesoamerican art style. Everything that is visually crafted, like the backgrounds, the detail in the buildings, even the design of the natives, are all inspired by the art during those ancient times in order to bring El Dorado to life. On top of that, even the use of color is actually very vibrant. I know that sounds weird to say about the City of Gold, but the colors displayed here are more bright and lively. It does help when the film starts out with the back alleys of Spain where the colors are dusty and muddy so that when you do enter El Dorado, it becomes a breath of fresh air. What is interesting to note is that you could actually tell that some characters have a distinct look to them from the early DreamWorks films. The European characters like Tulio and Miguel have a design that could share some similarities to the ones of the Prince of Egypt. As for the character animation, it definitely has some smooth and professionally realistic movements implemented here, and there are some characters that do highlight some of the animators' best accomplishments during the early days of DreamWorks history, like Tulio and Miguel whenever they banter together, and Altivo. Also, there are some scenes where the animation takes center stage and bring out its best quality, like with the action scenes when they sing It's Tough to Be a God, and the subtle moments when Elton John sings.
Crazy ride, the thrill has gone, I step outside.
If I do have to find one piece of criticism here, it would have to be with the use of computer animation. As it tries to mix traditional with digital animation, the result can end up as a mix. There are times when it can look nice, like with tzekel-kan when he controls the stone monster, and then there are times when you can tell that it's early CGI, like with many of the ocean effects. But even with that, it still doesn't change how the animation made El Dorado a true sight to behold. The characters. If there are two things that people will remember the most about this movie, it is Tulio and Miguel, the characters whom this film is all about. Tulio is more the brains of the two, where he thinks of the plans for their schemes and aims more for the prize. Miguel, however, is more the fun-loving adventurer where the journey itself is his reward and rather wants to live in the present rather than to either look back or ahead. Despite being a bit of opposites, they work off of each other extremely well. In fact, they could even be considered some of the greatest animated duos. One big factor that makes them so great is the performance done by Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh. They were such a great team when they were recording their lines with each other that the high energy and hilarious improv that they kept on delivering really translated well into animation. On top of that, the development of their friendship truly is the driving force of this feature. The dynamic duo would go and face some big obstacles that actually do more harm than the villain ever would, including conflict of interest when they now have everything they want as gods, when love would intervene when Chell comes in, and when one sees the city more for what it is than the other. In a way, their chemistry is tested to see how strong it can be, but it is made to where it gives out that feeling to not see them be separated.
Fine with me, pal. Fine with me, too. Fine. Okay. All right.
As for the other characters, they do help out with the movie as well. With Chell, she's the only native in El Dorado that knows about the duo scheme and decided to tag along in order to have adventures of her own, only to end up falling in love with one of them. There's tzekel-kan, the high priest who has a vision of the gods to be merciless and wants people to live in fear because of them by continuously offering sacrifices. Some could say that he's just looking for power, but he's actually just so enveloped by his own beliefs that it does make him quite a threatening villain. And then there's Altivo, who is best described as the precursor to Maximus from Tangled. Even if he's mostly a horse, whoever animated him did a great job playing with the variety of expressions on him. Although the main characters are the prime focus of this movie, the characters are still strongly built to help this film out to be a lot more engaging. The Road to El Dorado is one of, if not the most underrated film by DreamWorks Animation. In fact, this could be considered one of animation's hidden gems. With its enticingly engaging story, nicely crafted animation, lovable characters, a great soundtrack, and one of the most unforgettably fantastic duos, this movie is guaranteed to deliver a lot of fun, a lot of laughs, and a lot of heart. I highly recommend checking this one out. It's a great film to check if you want to have a good time, or even watch it with a friend so that you two can take some inspiration from Tulio and Miguel. I'm honestly glad that this is one of those animated films that started from the bottom and is slowly finding itself into popularity, because it really deserves the recognition of being such a great film. So much so that it deserves a little piece of gold from me. Hey guys, this is AniMat, and man, was I so glad that I actually picked this one out of the animation hat. And the biggest reason why is actually because I have been a huge Road to El Dorado fan for so long. In fact, I actually remember watching this movie in theaters back when it came out in 2000. So considering that it is a box office bomb, I would actually consider myself one of the lucky few who actually did get that experience. But anyways, going back into the Road to El Dorado itself, I would actually consider this one of the very few movies in which the best component that came out of it is hands down the main characters. And sure, with the Road to El Dorado, it offered a lot of great elements. Like, a lot of the other characters like Chell and Altivo are hilarious and they are fantastic. There is also the animation that is purely beautiful, and also the story, it's highly engaging, but there really isn't a lot of movies out there in which the main aspect, like the biggest thing that you get out of it, is the main characters. Usually, like, it would be the visuals, or the story, or like some of the other characters from left to right. Honestly, it could be a lot of things, but it's never usually the main characters. And with Tulio and Miguel, my god, they worked it out so beautifully. And sure, a lot of it is because of the director's works and a lot of the writer's works, in which they actually took components from the Road 2 movie series starring Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and try to implement a lot of that into Tulio and Miguel. But the biggest reason, I would have to say, why Tulio and Miguel really worked out well is actually because of the actors. And I'm talking, of course, about Kevin Kline and Kenneth Branagh. You could tell that they had such great chemistry together, and you could tell that they're capable of working off of each other during the recording of the movie, where, like, they gave out such great improv, and, like, pretty much you could tell that, like, they're absolutely great friends, that it translated perfectly onto the big screen, and it translated well onto animation. And I definitely got to give credit as well to all the artists and animators who actually were capable of taking that chemistry that Kevin and Kenneth actually got, and, like, they could put that onto animation. It's just such fantastic work all around. So definitely, like I said in my review, Tulio and Miguel are hands down some of the greatest animated duos that you could ever find, like right next to Timon and Pumbaa and several others. So definitely fantastic. So glad that I could revisit this movie again, and I highly recommend that you guys go and check it out. But anyways, that is pretty much it with the Road to El Dorado, and now it's time that we go and move on to a Patreon request. Yes, it's been a little while, and I guess now it's time that we are due for a good one here. And we definitely do have a good one in store, since this is going to be coming from Mohammed Fikri, who decided to graciously support me on my Patreon to the point that it actually got him this review request. So I just want to mention right now, if you guys would want to be like Mohammed and go and support my work, and you could go and earn some awesome rewards at the same time, not just a review request, but also plenty of other rewards, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat for more info. But on top of that, as usual, if you guys would like to suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Okay, so with all that said, what is it that Mohammed suggested to me? Well, apparently he also gave me a time machine, because my god, with this movie, I have to go way back. way in back. Because, get ready guys, we are about to embark on the oldest surviving animated feature ever made.
Congratulations.
No,
Very
congratulations,
good.
Steve. No, that was good.